This is a brand new BMC Teammachine R, the fastest team machine the Swiss company has ever made. And they don't call it an aero bike, but I mean, come on guys, it's clearly an aero bike. That's as aero as it gets. Not as wild as a new Carnago or Cervelo, but definitely more aero looking than the quite mild Tarmac SL8, somewhere in the middle of that spectrum. And it looks the way it does because the company worked with the Red Bull F1 team, which is why it has the wildest fork of any bike on sale right now, and they call it the Halo, in reference to the Halo on an F1 car. Although the Halo on an F1 car is for safety, this is for mad aero, which I kind of like. I kind of like that as an F1 fan. But is it as fast as it looks? And how does it compare to rivals in this space? Well, to find out, I've been riding a bike for the last 2 months, and I'll share my thoughts on how it rides, how fast it is around the Just Ride bike test track compared to other aero bikes, some likes and dislikes, and my verdict at the end of the video on whether you should buy it or avoid it. But first, the price. Let's get the price out of the way. This range topping model with a SRAM red AXA group set and DT Swiss wheels costs $15,000. And that's a lot of money indeed. But rest assured, the range starts from a slightly more accessible $7,000, which is still a lot of cash. Hopefully there might be a more affordable model in the future. This is the first year of the new bike, so maybe there might be cheaper alternatives coming down the line. And that's hardly good value for money when you compare it to the likes of a Canyon Air Road CFR or a Van Rysel RCR. Their top end models are less than £10,000. So this bike is definitely punching quite high indeed, but maybe the performance justifies the price tag on the bike. Let's find out. Let's dive in. So let's start with the looks, and visually it's a very exciting, dynamic bike indeed. I've always liked the way BMC team machines have looked going back the last 10 years, and this one is still as distinctive but takes the design in a slightly different direction, thanks in part to working with the Red Bull Advanced Technologies, the division of the Red Bull F1 team that allows any company with the budget to work with them and benefit from their advanced computer power and CFD expertise. It's not a case of giving Red Bull a blank canvas and saying design us the most aero bike. It's a collaboration in terms of really harnessing that F1 computing and aero expertise and BMC's expertise in designing bikes. So some real standout features, and the most distinctive is the fork. It's wild, it looks unlike anything else on the market right now, and probably the closest similarity is the Hope Lotus track bike. And when it comes to the fork, as with the rear stays, there are two schools of thought in terms of optimum aero. Either push the fork as close to the wheel as possible or move it further away. And the idea here is to reduce the turbulent air between the fork and the wheel and allow cleaner airflow over the downtube and the rest of the frame. And whether it works better than a more conventional fork like in a Tarmac or Canyon is something only a wind tunnel test would provide that data on. And then staying up front, we have the handlebar, naturally a one-piece carbon fibre affair with full internal routing, but it's narrow, 36 centimetres in the hoods, so as narrow as the UCI rules allow, but then with flared drops to allow a bit more control when you are descending through the corners. And it's the same handlebar across the entire range and size of bikes as well. So whether you ride a size small or an XL, you get the same narrow handlebar because it puts the rider in that super narrow, airy tuck position when you are really going flat out fast. So the head tube is narrow but very deep as well, and the down tube up by the fork crown is very narrow and pinched in and then flares around the bottom cage, which is an aero design, something BMC have done for a number of years now to really optimize aero around a water bottle. It's designed for a round water bottle, so no aero bottles like the Cannondale Super 6 Evo or the Trek Madone, but for racing, the pros use round bottles, so a round bottle cage makes more sense. And then we have what can only be described as a massive bottom bracket junction area. This section of the frame on aero bikes has really gone supersized in the last few years. We've seen it on the Pinarello Dogma F as well. maximum stiffness, of course, with power transfer when you're sprinting and climbing. And it's even a tiny aero nubbin, for want of a better description, underneath the bottom bracket to manage airflow around the rear wheel. How much difference that makes is anybody's guess. Then very chunky chain stays, again for maximum power transfer. Fairly slender seat stays, dropped rear stays of course, and an aero seat tube that hugs the rear wheel with an aero seat post. And I like the stealth dropouts, which is increasingly common on bikes from Pinarello, Windspace and other brands now. And of course it's disc brake only and electronic group sets only as well. No mechanicals on the bike, which will limit how low a price the bike goes in the future. Now let's talk about weight, and aero bikes are never the lightest, but they are getting lighter. BMC claims a frame weight of 910 grams, and this size 56 on my scales with no pedals fitted is 7.3 kilos with the SRAM red accent group set and the DT Swiss wheels. And that weight compares to a top of the range aero CFR from Canyon, but a lot heavier than a Specialized Tarmac SL8. So definitely more of an aero bike in terms of weight than a lightweight aero all-rounder like a Tarmac or something of that ilk. Right, let me share 5 things I dislike about the new Teammachine R. I'll start with tyre clearance, only 30mm official, despite the halo fork being massively wide. You can only fit up to 30, and most race bikes are now up to 32, 34, even 35 with the NV Melee. The bike is also spec'd with 26mm wide Pirelli tyres, 26 the same as a Tarmac. But if you're not racing, a 28, even a 30 is going to be a better choice. So yeah, narrow tyres and limited tyre clearance are issues with this bike and could date it quite badly given the trend for wide tyres and wide rims. And then we have a press fit bottom bracket, PF86, which works fine, but lots of bike companies are now going to a threaded bottom bracket, and lots of consumers want threaded, either 68 or T47, so bit of a missed opportunity there. Another dislike is the fact the bike costs 15,000 bucks, yet we don't get a top of the range saddle. It's got carbon rails, but where's the 3D printed version here? That's not good enough. It's a very comfy saddle though, just not the top end model it could be. And then the seat clamp are 2 tiny bolts at the back of the seat tube here, and they are tiny bolts with a low torque setting, and they are right in the firing line of rear wheel spray. And as you can see right now, the weather is awful, and in the UK the roads are covered in mud, and I do worry about long-term durability of 2 tiny bolts on the back of the seat tube there. In the 2 months of riding it's been fine, and I put some electrical tape over there, but I shouldn't have to do that on a 15 grand bike. So not ideal. A seat clamp here or there would probably be better. But there are a few things I like about this bike. I love the colour match handlebar to the top tube. Even the spacers are colour match as well, and I think that looks cool as hell. I'd love to see that on more bikes, but maybe you need white bar tape. Let me know down below. Generally, I love the way the bike looks. I think it looks fast, it looks sleek, it looks modern. I also like the SRAM red accent group set. Yes, very expensive, but my goodness me, are these new hoods lovely to use. Fantastic ergonomics, really nice hood shape, light lever action for brakes, powerful brakes as well. It's a fantastic group set. Can't wait to see this at force and rival levels in the future. And the tyres, while narrow, too narrow for my taste, are the very fast P0 Race SL, and they are tubeless. The bike came tubeless setup with the DT Swiss wheels, which I approve of. So tubeless out of the box with some high quality, fast rolling, and in my experience, durable tyres. So, does the BMC give you wings? Well, yeah, sort of, it does. It's damn quick. And like any aero bike, coming from a non-aero bike, it feels rapid. Definitely feels the quickest of all the aero bikes I've been on this year. And around my test track, 11 kilometers at 32 kph, it required less power just than a Canyon Air Road, 185 watts. So yeah, definitely quick. It's a way the bike gets up to speed and the way it helps you ride fast with lower power outputs. So 35 or 40 kilometers per hour, your power output is so low, it makes riding fast feel easy, effortless. And that really is the overriding sensation and experience and takeaway of riding this new bike for the last 2 months. And if I was racing tomorrow, I would probably choose it over a tarmac or a canyon. But there are a few concessions to that speed that might not make it the right bike for everybody. And simply put, it's not the smoothest bike in the world, which if you're not racing, but you still want a fast bike for a Sunday blast, it's a bit of a letdown. It's not helped by the 26mm wide, narrow tyres. And when I put my MVs in there, which was on 28, the comfort definitely increased a bit. The downside to a bike, and especially the front of the bike, in my experience when it's windy, is that crosswind stability we always talk about isn't so good. The bike is definitely more susceptible to crosswinds than the Canyon Air Road or the tarmac SL8. I'm not sure if it's a fork or the wheel or something else, but as a package, which I'm testing the bike as, it's definitely a bit of a downside for me. In terms of stiffness comparison to other aero bikes, in my experience, I would say it's more than a tarmac SL8 and less than the Pinarello Dogma F, and fairly comparable to the Cannondale Super 6 Evo. So yeah, good stiffness. You know you're on a stiff bike. You are reminded all the time you're on a stiff bike, whether that's because you're sprinting, attacking out of the corner, or just the feedback that comes through the skinny tyres to your contact points, your hands and your bum. But if you're riding on a smooth road like this one here, and you love riding fast for almost no effort, yeah, it's a fantastic bike. And that feeling of speed is helped by the fit and a narrow handlebar. And it's a nice handlebar too. Like I say, narrow, slightly flared drops, nice stem length on this bike, size 56, and the tops, for when you're cruising along the flats, taking the view, not much today because it's very cloudy, or climbing a steep gradient, the tops are slender enough you can fit your hands around. Well, I can anyway. No bar tape across the centre. If you don't wear gloves in the summer and your hands get sweaty, it can be a bit slippery. So clearly this bike is fast in a straight line and it's quick through the bends as well. And we have to talk about the halo fork. Crazy looks, crazy ride. Well, sort of. It's not that bad. It's definitely stiff. The front end is definitely on the firm side, but the bike with the steering geometry does track through the corners and bends very nicely. Very easy handling. Does feel like a BMC. And the Teammachine, the old Teammachine, the regular SLR, one of my all-time favourites, going back to the first one I rode in 2012 or 2013, still a fantastic looking bike. So, time for my verdict. Is the BMC Teammachine R worth you buying? Well, it's one of the fastest bikes I've ridden in the last few years. So on that front, it definitely delivers. But there are a few compromises in pursuit of that speed compared to a tarmac or a Trekmadone or a Canyon Air Road for me to really recommend it or justify it. And then there's the price. There's a lot more money than a top level Canyon or Van Rysel. And on that front, the value for money front, is hard to recommend. So an amazing bike if you can overlook the price and some of those cons I mentioned earlier. And it is a bike that does deliver amazing speed and just amazing performance, a lot of fun to ride, but a hard one to justify when you take everything into account. So definitely a bike to consider if you want a fast race bike in 2025 and are happy to overlook the poor value for money and some of the negatives I mentioned earlier in the video. And if you want to see my review of the Canyon Air Road, that's worth checking out in comparison to this bike here. The video is linked right here for your enjoyment. Anyway, that's all for today. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you all again very soon. And I'm really sorry about the weather. The gloomiest, murkiest day for filming, but needs must.